Hello everyone, this is Rick Gurgis with the Red Power team, and today I would like to go through residue management on the Flagship combines. We have quite a range of different ages of machines, different residue spreading systems, so I'd kind of like to just go run through all of them and some adjustments we can make to help with our residue spread, which is becoming more and more important all the time, especially in no-till situations, strip till, anything like that, where we need a good even distribution of our crop mat spread to make our spring planting the next year much easier. Now, as you can see, I've put together a whole different series of our combines age-wise, starting with probably the newest 50 series. Then we're going to step back into what 40s or 50s could have. Then we're jumping down to 30s. And then on the far end, we'll go back to the 20 series, and then the original 10 series would have had that type of spreader. So we've got quite a few to go through, all trying to do the same principle, but we're just going to walk through some adjustments that we can make. So as we start with probably our newest member of what we might have for options is just our dual disc or a horizontal spread, similar back to the old 1460 days where we've just got a couple dual disc spreaders, hydraulically driven, to spread our material. Everything from the rotor discharge and the sieve discharge is dropping on here and we're spreading it. Probably the simplest one to adjust. Basically, the only adjustments we really got is just the speed of the spreaders from the in cab that were similar to the other units. But then also the only other one you could do is you could adjust the pitch of our impellers on here. Some different screw holes on here where we could bump them over a little bit, make it a little more aggressive. Historically, we leave them pretty much in the mid position. And I'm going to say with these, we're probably going to be capped out at a 40-foot spread pattern. Maybe we'll get to 45, but there's going to be so many things that affect that as far as the moisture content of the straw, the wind direction if we've got crosswinds we're dealing with, the size of the head or the amount of material that we're dropping down onto them can also affect our spread width pattern. So again, pretty simplistic setup for corn or beans. Again, only thing we're going to change really on this one is going to be the speed of the spreader. Again, we're going to want to slow them down when we get in corn so we're not beating up our next rows of corn with cobs and whatnot. So again, pretty straightforward on these. So now we're going to move into an option that we could have, and I should back up to our dual disc system we just looked at. Was available on 40 series, used a little bit, but it's been coming more and more popular as we've moved into the 50 series. Same setup on either one. So with a 40 or 50 series combine, you would have actually three different spreading options. So we've got our what we're familiar with, a vertical spread that we've had kind of from the beginning of the Flagship series. And then we would have had the dual disc. And in the vertical spread, we've got three different option groups with it. We have in-cab adjustability for a few items on here, and then as we'll see on the next one down, we have mechanical adjust. So essentially the exact same adjustments, only we're either in-cab or just doing it manually. So as we look at this one, very similar to what we're used to in the past as we progress down the line. The thing that it gives us the ability to is we can adjust some different wings here essentially that allow to adjust for spread width there also. The other item that we do with this particular unit, same as the mechanical, is we can adjust this up and down in here, which is going to affect how much material we're leaving right behind the combine. So again, I've got these up in the disengaged position just so we can see things easier. But when we have this down, the gap that we leave in here is greatly going to affect how much material we're leaving right behind the machine. So again, we'll go through those adjustments in a little bit more detail here in a minute when we get underneath and we can see what we're doing. But the only other thing that we've got on these is we've got these outer wings that are adjustable, and you can get this as an in-cab adjustment also, but on this particular unit we're just manual adjust, and you can see the difference between this unit and that one is on here we've got the wings totally up, and on this unit they've got them adjusted down. And what this is going to do, it's going to help on your spread width to some degree in windy conditions. And again, it's kind of your preference where you want to do. We don't want to totally rely on these for spread width. We want to be able to do a lot of what our other adjustment with this, and then these are just kind of a secondary thing to help in case we've got a particularly windy day and we need to tweak it a little bit. But if we rely on these totally for spread width or pattern, we're going to wear these out. These are just kind of a deflector. So as we look at this a little closer, what's our difference between in-cab and mechanical? Well, it's very little, because basically the in-cab, we're putting an actuator in the place of where we have mechanical linkage here. And the same way, there's an actuator in here versus the crank that's underneath that we'll show you here in a little bit. Okay, so now we're moving into 30 series combines. And again, a lot of the same principles in place. As time has gone on, we've added more options for adjustability. Same thing here, we've got our deflectors manually adjusted. We have some adjustment in here, not as much as when we move to the 40 and 50 series, but it gives us a little bit, again, to affect how much material we're going to spread directly behind the combine. So again, we'll look underneath this in a sec here and get a little better idea of what we're doing, what adjustments we can make to affect our spread quality. All right, we're going to move now to our 20 series and the 10 series. We're back to our old original finger bar grate. So this was the original design. Not a whole lot of adjustment to it, at least with tools up here. Everything, we've got this whale tail unit underneath here. They're really the only adjustment we have on spread width here, again with RPM of the spreaders, which is true on all of them, but really is where we have our finger bars bent. And actually there's a fairly simple special tool you can make. All we've got here is a 1/2 inch pipe elbow, and you're going to want about a 24 inch of pipe for a handle in it. And all we're going to do is put that on here, and if you had a longer handle, you can bend these up or down, whichever you're trying to do. Because what we're trying to do is minimize the dimension here, or this gap. The tighter we have this, the further you're going to throw material. Now in this particular one, over time, they will kind of bend out a little bit. So that's why you want to have your little special tool. You can pop that on there and bend them however you see fit. Get them up tighter for bean straw, and then when you get the corn, it wouldn't hurt to bend them a little bit further away. But pretty basic system here, not a lot more we can do adjustment wise on these, but it will make a huge difference on your spread pattern on these if you get these bent up tighter in your bean straw. It'll definitely throw it a lot further. All right, as we look underneath it, the original, the 10 and the 20 series machine are finger bar grate units per se. There's not much adjustability underneath, as we can see. Everything's fixed in place. This is our whale tail unit, as it's often referred to, splits it, kind of gets it started out. To begin, really our only dimension or adjustment is how close we have these right here. And that's where we use that Super Duty special tool, bend these up snugger if you want it to throw further for bean straw, and then it doesn't hurt to bend them away a little bit when you start doing corn. The one downfall of this unit is if we get in super dead dry bean straw, when you're down in that 9-10% range, straw is really dry, has a tendency to really want to blow a lot of this material through right in this area because it's chopped up so much. One thing we can do to offset that is take the stationary knife on your chopper and disengage it about halfway. That way we're not grinding the straw up as bad, and we don't need to anyway. We might end up with just a little bit longer piece of straw, more inclined to grab this and get spread outward further. But that's about it on these. There's not much more we can do to adjust other than where we have these bent to. All right, so as we move forward now, we went from the 20 series, we jumped up to the 30 series. We've started to make some improvements in this area. We can see right away the finger bar grate is gone, and we've gone to more of a solid spread shield behind here with a couple of adjustments on this one. A key one that many people overlook is right up here. So as you can see, we've got 4 bolts right up here. There's 2 down here that are slotted, and these 2 up here are actually individual holes. So what we need to do for corn, we want to have this slid away. So one of the main damage points we get in the whale tail, or this whole area, is if we have dimensions set too tight when we're running through corn, it's very hard on it because the cobs are getting caught between the end of the impeller and our shielding, and it's trying to cut them in half. Creates a lot of vibration. It's very hard on this system. So what we need to do for corn, we want this slid away from our impellers because we don't need to throw things so far. Even with the RPM reduced, we don't need a tight dimension here. So there's 4 bolts we need to work with. We're going to have this slid rearward for corn. We're going to move it forward for beans. So we're going to have to remove these 2. I can have my hand on the one underneath, remove these 2, a couple little slots up here, we can get sockets on them. Remove them completely, loosen these 2, and we're going to slide it in for beans, or we're going to pull it out for corn, and then reinstall our 2 bolts up here. Very important we do that. It makes a huge effect on your spread pattern. All right, so as we look underneath of this series 30 series unit, we've got again, this adjustment we're talking about. You can kind of see these upper holes here, but we're talking about this dimension here, and that's by moving this forward or rearward. We're going to reduce or increase this dimension right here, and that's where we're going to get better spread pattern again as we reduce this dimension. The other one we have to work with is with this adjustment here, where we're changing the gap up here. So this is going to control how much material that we leave directly behind the machine. And again, we're down in the field position. It's going to be more down in here, pushing it straight down. So that's why this here is going to make a difference how much material is going straight behind us on this particular unit. So again, similar whale tail to what we had on our 1020 series machine, but it's filled in now. We got a little better tray, a little better distribution, a few more adjustments with it.
Okay.
So as I was talking about a minute ago, when we want to adjust the dimension up here, it's going to be done with this unit. We've got a turn item or removable item here. We can turn that, loosen this up, and we can move this up or down depending on how much material we want directly behind the combine. So I've loosened this up. We're clear down. There we're clear up. Clear down, clear up, depending on where you want it. Then we're going to tighten that up again and lock it into place depending on what you want it to do. So this is on a 30 series machine. You have 2 key adjustments that affect your spread pattern. 1, how much gap are we leaving here with this adjustment? And then 2, the bolts up on top and the dimension that we have between this and our paddle tips. Okay, now we're moving into 40 and 50 series, the options that we have for those machines. So here we have I'm going to call the mechanical adjust that we have for these machines versus in cab. And again, what we're doing is we're adjusting the dimension of, we have 2 individual wings this time, and we can adjust how tight or how far away we have it again from the impellers, which affects the spread pattern. We still have our adjustment up here that we just referred to on the 30 series. Again, you can see this has been marked corn and beans. We have our 2 different bolts here and here. Again, affects how far in and out we have this to the paddles, and again affects how far we're going to spread things. Still with the diverters, that kind of the common theme through all the machines. But this gives us individual control. As we talk about the unit down the next one coming up, going to be about the same thing, only it's in cab where we have an electronic actuator in here. Okay. As we look underneath this, pretty similar again to what we saw with the 30 series. Again, with this adjustment fore and aft that we looked at just before with the bolts. But this time we have a little more adjustability like I showed you with those turnbuckles on the back. And then also when we're talking about this gap in here and what we want to do with it, this one gives us the ability to change that right here. And basically they moved it from back underneath to clear at the bottom here now. So again, affects this gap, how big of a gap there, or how much material do we want directly behind the machine is basically what this is going to adjust. So again, similar, but a little more options here. Where do you need this exactly? It's going to vary again. There's just so many variables with the type of moisture content of your straw, how much material we're pushing through there. But we have some things we can try to make this, spread a little further. Historically, I'm going to say in beans, just like always, we're going to want these clear up, tight against here. We're going to want this slid forward and not a whole lot of gap here. We're going to want to spread most of that material outward. So again, we're going to have this pretty well tight, everything brought up, and we're going to try to get that material to go out as far as we can. Okay, so now we are on the in-cab adjust version of what we just looked at. Essentially the exact same adjustments. With our wings we have two electronic actuators here, and we have one underneath here to take care of the up and down with this one. So same scenario, we can do it from up in the cab, still have this adjustment, and as we look at this one, it slid in the forward position this time, so it's set up more to spread bean straw. Again, we definitely want to move this back again when you get ready to do corn. It's very hard on all this if we leave it slid forward doing corn. It's still just a good idea to move that.
Okay.
So as we look at this underneath, again, very similar to what we just saw. We're missing that crank that was here because we have the actuator on the back side, but otherwise very similar. We have the two paddles right here, and then we can move this up and down from in the cab with the controls in the cab on the right console armrest. All right, we're in the cab of the in-cab control unit that we were just looking at. So we're in a 50 series with in-cab vertical spread, and we're looking at what buttons we're going to use to control the spreader or those different items that we were just looking at. I'm not totally thrilled with these because when you look at them, it's pretty hard to understand what's going on with what, other than this is the spreader, this has something to do with the deflector, and the same thing there. This is still spreader speed. That one's fairly intuitive. This button actually is the one that controls what I'm going to call the height, or that up-down dimension we were talking about. And when I push this, it's going to give us this on the display. So that means it's clear down. Again, hard to understand, but that's what we mean. And when we do this, that's going to mean it's clear up. So if there's any correlation to this, there really isn't, unfortunately, of how do I remember what's what, just remember black is beans. If you got everything black in there, that's going to be your setting for beans, because that's clear up tight. And that's got that dimension, the smallest, so it's going to, theoretically, should throw your material the furthest out. Now, those other two individual flaps that we were referring to, or I call them flaps, wings, whatever, are on individual adjustments. Now, when a person first looks at this, you would think it's for those main big deflectors back there, but it's not. This is for the left-hand side. And see there again, if we think of this, black as beans, these were, when they are clear out or they're tight against the impeller, then they're black. If we take them both the other way, back in like this, this is going to be what I'm going to call a corn setting. So it's moved them away, so they're not clear up against there. It's not going to throw the material any further. So again, unfortunately, the only correlation we got, I don't know why they're doing them individually, but that's just the way it's set up. Just remember, black is beans. That's got everything snugged up, both directions. And again, we can play with this a little bit. Once you get to the field, again, conditions can vary what we're doing, but that's the best correlation. Black is for beans. And again, this icon is for the one that moves them up and down. These two are the ones that tilt them in and out. All right, just in conclusion, a few things to wrap up. We've kind of gone through all our spreader systems from the newest down the line to our older systems that we've had. A few things in general that will affect all of them, of course, is spreader RPM, regardless whether you're horizontal, vertical, whatever. Faster isn't always better. Sometimes in bean straw, if we slow down 100 RPM or so, sometimes we can get a better grip of it, throw it a little bit further. In corn, we definitely want to slow this down so we're not throwing material out and beating on our corn rows right beside where we went, especially if we're in an 8-row corn head situation. One other thing on all of them that can affect this, again, when we get in that dead dry bean straw, is sometimes it's to our advantage if we disengage our chopper knives a little bit. We've got adjustment right up here, and for soybeans, sometimes you may want to disengage this a little bit, maybe even to the mid-range with that dead dry straw. Because what we're trying to accomplish there is if we don't have the straw all ground up into tiny little tidbits, we can get a little bit longer piece of straw yet, we can throw it a little bit further, there's a little more weight in it. But that's only on days when you get super dead dry straw, and it's just turning to dust as it goes through the machine. So again, a lot of different systems. We've got some different adjustability to them. If you run into any questions with this again, just contact your local Red Power store, and your combine techs can help you walk through what adjustments you might need. But again, hopefully this will help you a little bit on some adjustments you can make to help spread your straw in a pattern that you're satisfied with. Thank you.